Welcome to the Crypto Teacher Stock Channel. And guys, you know I come with that video just to make you think. Now basically this one is on naked short selling. There's nothing wrong with short selling, guys, because of course you buy the contracts, so therefore you have something to lose. But a naked short, guys, you have shares that don't even exist. We've had Goldman Sachs, all the big banks caught in this. And guys, we know the SEC doesn't investigate anything. We know time and time again, Ponzi schemes all over the place, and the SEC looks away. But the fact is that naked short selling will destroy companies, and that has destroyed plenty of companies. So guys, you're talking about a share that you don't even own that you're shorting. So therefore, you're collapsing these companies where their shares are going down. And the fact is that if you have no clue about finances, you're not even noticing it. You're not even going to pay attention to it. So that's how they get away, and they make billions and billions of dollars from this. And especially during the crisis that we had, they made billions. But guys, enjoy the video.
Short selling rules put into place on Monday, something that our next guest is completely behind. He's in favor of it, in part because he believes his company had been unfairly victimized by a practice known as naked short selling. Overstock.com CEO Patrick Byrne joining us now exclusively. Patrick, good to see you in person. Usually you're in Utah.
Brian, thanks for having me.
All right, well, hey, you're back on the regulation SHO list. I guess congratulations are in order on that one. That's not a congratulations.
Right, now it's about our 840th day out of 880 days that it exists.
So it's still going on.
Oh yeah, now it is the system, and the government has figured out at this point it's not a little corruption at the edge of the system, it is the system.
All right, and let us explain exactly what this is. Basically, right, it is, in order to short a stock, you've got to borrow it. If I want to short a stock, I've got to go to you, the broker, and say, I believe the stock's going to go down. Patrick, I'm going to borrow 100 shares from you, and then when they go down, I'll buy them back at a lower price, and I'll make the profit. Naked short selling is when I say, I'm going to short the stock, but you don't have it to give me, or I don't ask, and then I just take the paper profit.
Which a reasonable person would say, well, if you're selling something and you don't own it, and you don't borrow it, and you don't deliver, what are you selling in return for that money you're taking? And the answer is nothing.
Nothing. And you can't do that when you bet a stock's going to go higher. There's no way to do that on the long end.
Of course, you can't buy stuff and you have to deliver the money when you buy. So they're phantom shares. There's now, the government has admitted there's over $1 billion. I think there's probably close to 10 billion circulating the system. Nobody even can keep track of them anymore. For 3 years, as you know, people were saying, I was kind of nuts trying to say, this is the system, it's going to crack the system. The government on Monday drew a fence around 17 banks and said, this thing that we've been saying hasn't been going on, it's gotten to be such a big problem, we have to protect these 17 banks. Ironically enough, at least 9 of them have been involved in doing it to everybody else, but that's a different story.
All right, have you noticed any change in the shorting activity on your stock since these rules were first put into place? Any change at all?
Well, if anything, I noticed the other day, your own data on your website on our stock shows that we have 6,000 shareholders, and the top 50 own 106% of the stock.
Which is impossible.
One would think.
Yeah.
And that fact notwithstanding, on Friday, 20% of our stock traded in a stock where insiders, I mean, there's just not that stock there. At this point, it's all make-believe. And I try to divorce it from our stock. I've been trying to say this is a...
But that's tough. It's tough for your employees, tough for your shareholders to say this is what's going on, because what they just want is for this, business to be sort of left alone to live or die on its own merits.
Of course. You can't go, of course. It's that simple. You can't go out there and sell somebody else's stock. Can I use a different company than mine to walk you through a quick example to show you?
Go ahead. Don't have a lot of time, but go ahead.
I'll be real quick. There's a company called Force Protection. They make V-shaped vehicles that our soldiers use in Iraq.
A short seller's favorite.
Short seller's favorite. But it's a $200 million company making $20 million a year. Stock was at 25, tried that as secondary. It got naked shorted to 4. They canceled their secondary. Because they did that, they canceled an expansion of their factory. They can't keep up with orders. So somewhere in Iraq this week, some soldiers are going to die because some hedge fund guy wanted a new Ferrari. Multiply that by hundreds of companies, drug research, financials, manufacturers, it's destroying America.
But you agree there is a time and a place where short selling can be beneficial. They uncovered MCI and Enron.
Short selling is great. Short selling, it's like the difference between someone is out there complaining about sexual harassment. Someone comes back and says, no, sex is okay. Well, Yeah, but there's a difference between sexual harassment and sex. There's a difference between naked short selling and short selling. One's legal. Short selling is fine. Naked short selling is a crime. The government's just turned a blind eye for it until the last week they suddenly realized, hey, it's bringing down our financial system.
Patrick, very interesting. And listen, as a CEO of an online retailer, this is the last thing you want to be dealing with, isn't it?
Well, as an American, it's the last thing. It's our company's going to survive. We're going to do fine. I made it through an alleyway with a dozen thugs tried to roll me, and I'm out. I'm okay, but somebody's got to clean out this alleyway.
Well, here's the good news. You're not an evil oil speculator, Patrick. So it could be worse.
We'll begin on the next item on our agenda, which is a recommendation from the Division of Trading and Markets. This recommendation, if we adopt it today, will put in place a new anti-fraud rule, specifically aimed at the abusive and manipulative practice called naked short selling. A half-century ago, securities trading required legions of messengers who scurried about lower Manhattan with parcels filled with stock certificates and checks. And in those days, the New York Stock Exchange would have to close for part of each week to catch up with the paperwork. Today, paper's been largely replaced with electronic data, and that's a very good thing. It's allowed trading volume on the nation's securities exchanges to rise exponentially, and it's helped to drive down the cost of trading for individual investors to a small fraction of what they had to pay in the old days. But it's also given rise to new opportunities for fraud. In particular, today's elaborate system of electronic net settlement has enabled a particularly pernicious form of fraud called naked short selling. In a garden variety short sale, the operation of the market is a powerful discipline on the short seller because he or she can experience unlimited losses if the stock's price rises. But that potential for loss, and hence the discipline that the market exerts on short sellers, disappears if the short seller doesn't cover the sale as required. Legal short sellers have to borrow the shares that they sell. Illegal naked short sellers don't bother with that part. They sell shares of stock that they haven't borrowed and that they have no intention of borrowing. In some cases, they sell shares that don't even exist. Illegal naked short selling is an especially serious threat to smaller public companies whose relatively thin market capitalizations can be more easily manipulated. And in the same way, it threatens the savings and investments of many retail investors in these smaller companies. There are many legitimate reasons that a trade might fail to settle. But the extreme abuses that are reflected in securities being chronically listed on Reg Show's threshold security list for months and years at a time is ample evidence that there is also fraud in the market that needs to be arrested. Periodically, there are reports that following a legitimate purchase of 100% of the outstanding shares of a microcap company, millions of phantom shares continue to be traded by naked short sellers.